She danced when no one was watching, or at least, she thought no one was. Barefoot on the marble floor of a mansion she didn't belong to, Malia let the music in her headphones drown out the world. It was the only time she felt like she was alive, like she wasn't just a maid folding laundry for people who never looked her in the eye, like she wasn't the orphan passed from one foster home to the next. At 24, Malia had nothing, no family, no birthday she could call her own, just a pair of worn-out sneakers, a journal filled with choreography, and a job that reminded her every day that this luxury was not hers. But that night, someone saw her. He stood in the shadows of the hallway, Elijah Grant, 35, tech billionaire, silent, emotionless, engaged to Ava Sinclair, a woman known for her beauty and her cruelty, a man who had passed by Malia 100 times without ever truly seeing her. Until now. She paused. Their eyes met. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. And that moment, silent, electric, fragile, would be the beginning of everything. The beginning of a secret, of a scandal, of a crime no one could have predicted. So how does a housemaid, quiet, obedient, forgotten, become the center of a story that would rip through the walls of power, privilege, and deception? What did she do? And why did someone want her gone? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Now, let's begin. Malia had always known how to be small, how to fold herself into the background, how to walk without sound. She was 24, raised in foster homes that passed her along like a borrowed book, thumbed through, forgotten, left on a shelf. Her dreams had been hers alone. A dancer in secret, she moved not for stages or applause, but to feel something that belonged only to her. At night, after the mansion went still, she would let the music in her headphones carry her across the cold marble floor like it was a stage. Her body the brush, the mansion a canvas. She had never been kissed, never had a birthday cake of her own, never known what it felt like to be someone's first thought in the morning. But she knew how to scrub blood from tile grout, how to polish silver without leaving a fingerprint, and how to disappear when footsteps came too close. The Grant estate wasn't a home. It was a museum of wealth, sterile, echoing, wrapped in silence. At its center was Elijah Grant, 35, a tech billionaire. Brilliant, quiet, and unreachable. He didn't yell. He didn't laugh. He moved like someone carrying an invisible weight that no one ever asked about. To Malia, he wasn't cruel. He was just elsewhere. A man behind glass. His fiancée, Ava Sinclair, was a different story. Beautiful, powerful, possessive. The kind of woman who never heard the word no without punishing whoever dared say it. Her smile could cut through steel. Her voice could silence a room. She saw Malia as furniture, useful, disposable, invisible. Malia cleaned a world she'd never belonged to. But she danced for herself until someone saw her. And once someone sees you, you can't go back to being invisible. Would you keep dancing if it meant someone powerful might never let you go? The walls of the Grant estate were lined with more than just art and silence. They were lined with eyes. Cameras in corners, motion sensors in halls, lenses tucked behind ornate frames, watching, always watching. But Malia didn't know that. No one told the help. No one warned the invisible. Each day blurred into the next. Ava Sinclair never missed a chance to remind Malia of her place. This isn't your home. Just wipe the counters and stay out of sight. Her words weren't loud, but they cut deep. Malia never talked back. She nodded. She apologized. She kept her head down. Because the moment you let people know they've hurt you, they don't stop. They push harder. And Ava pushed. Elijah Grant never got involved. He was there, but not really. He walked the halls like a shadow, distant, distracted, unreachable. But something had shifted since that night he saw her dancing. He started appearing more often. Silent. Watching. never speaking. At first, Malia thought she was imagining it. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she wanted it to mean something. But then, small things changed. The old vacuum she'd been struggling with for months was suddenly replaced. A broken heel on her work shoes mysteriously repaired. A fresh pair of earbuds tucked into her locker, with no note. It wasn't love. Not yet. It was something quieter. A question hanging in the air between them that neither of them dared to ask. So she danced. After everyone was asleep, when her chores were done, she'd press play and move through the halls like the silence belonged to her. But Malia had no idea the cameras had caught everything. Every spin, every smile, every glance between her and Elijah that lingered too long. And what Elijah did next would turn his world upside down. He made a call that night, a call that no one in his position should have made. He told security to delete the footage from the east hallway, time-stamped 11:42 p.m. The request was simple, quiet, but it raised a flag in the system. A flag that would eventually alert someone who had more to lose than both of them combined. And just like that, Malia wasn't dancing in the dark anymore. She was stepping into a storm she never saw coming. What would you do if the only person who ever saw you was also the one being watched? It happened on a Thursday, the kind of night where the air feels too still, like something's waiting to be broken. Malia was alone in the east corridor again, lost in movement. Her arms stretched toward the ceiling, her feet gliding across polished marble. In that moment, she wasn't a maid. She wasn't forgotten. She was simply free. Then she stopped. Not because the music ended, but because she felt it. A presence. She turned slowly. Elijah Grant stood in the doorway, silent, unmoving, his eyes locked on hers. He didn't speak. He didn't smile. He didn't leave right away either. For a long breath, the two of them just existed, like neither of them knew who they were outside that moment. Then, without a word, Elijah turned and walked away. Malia stood frozen, her heart thudding so loud she could barely hear the silence that followed. Had she crossed a line? Had she imagined the softness in his eyes? She barely slept. By morning, the household had changed. Ava Sinclair's voice pierced the air like glass on tile. Her diamond bracelet, gone. The Cartier one, a gift from Elijah last fall. She was livid. Accusations came quick. There's only one person who touches my dresser besides me. Her tone was sharp. Everyone looked at Malia. Malia didn't argue. She'd learned not to. But her hands shook. Not from guilt, but from the weight of knowing she couldn't defend herself against someone like Ava. She was just the help. A missing bracelet meant her word was already buried beneath suspicion. But then, Elijah spoke. She didn't take it. The room went silent. Even the maid stopped pretending to clean. Ava turned to him, stunned. "You're defending her?" He didn't explain. He didn't raise his voice. He just repeated himself. She didn't take it. He had never taken sides before. Not in family arguments, not in business disputes, not even when his own brother begged for support during a lawsuit. Elijah Grant avoided conflict like it was poison. But this time, he stood between Malia and the storm, and Ava saw it. Something in her eyes shifted, something cold, dangerous. Later that day, the bracelet was found tucked under a drawer divider, misplaced, forgotten. No apology came, but a new message was sent, loud and clear. Malia wasn't invisible anymore. What would you do if someone powerful risked everything just to say, "I believe you"? It started with small kindnesses, nothing loud, nothing anyone else would notice. A hot meal left on the kitchen counter, covered with foil, and her name scribbled in quiet ink. A folded note slipped under her door. "Take the night off. Rest." Her chores were done before she even woke. No one said who did it, but she knew. Then one night, she lingered too long near the back garden, watching the moonlight ripple across the pool. She wasn't supposed to be there, not in her uniform, not barefoot. But she stayed. And for once, someone stayed with her. Elijah stepped out, not as a billionaire, not as a boss, but as a man who looked tired of pretending he didn't feel. They didn't speak at first, just silence between two people who had lived most of their lives surrounded by noise but never heard. Then he asked quietly, "Why do you always dance alone?" She didn't answer right away, but the question sat there, open. And for the first time, she let herself unfold. She told him about the first time she danced, age 5, barefoot in a group home hallway while other kids fought over plastic toys. How the music had given her something that couldn't be taken. How she gave it up when survival meant cleaning floors, not chasing dreams. He listened, and then he spoke. About growing up in a mansion full of staff, with parents who never hugged him. About being raised by nannies who changed every year, tutors who taught with cold precision. About how success felt hollow when you had no one to share it with. How the money only ever bought silence. They came from different worlds, but shared the same silence. Night after night, their talks grew longer. At first by accident, then by choice. Until silence became comfort. Until stolen glances turned into knowing looks. Until kindness turned into something they didn't dare name. But the walls still had eyes. The house still remembered everything. And someone else had begun to notice. Would you trust someone if the cost of being seen was everything you had to lose? It wasn't just a feeling anymore. Ava could see it. Between glances, between footsteps, between the way Elijah no longer turned away when Malia entered the room. He wasn't a man known for warmth, yet somehow around that girl in the maid's uniform his silence changed shape. Ava wasn't stupid, and she wasn't the kind to wait for proof. She hired a private investigator. Quiet, discreet. A former cop turned shadow. His job was simple. Follow Malia. Track her movements. Record anything unusual. Report directly to Ava. Meanwhile, the house grew heavier, tighter. Malia felt it. The air changed. The other staff watched her now, some with curiosity, others with contempt. Her steps grew shorter, her eyes stayed lowered. She avoided Elijah at all costs, not out of disrespect but out of fear. Fear that whatever had bloomed between them would cost her the only roof over her head. She knew girls like her didn't survive scandals. Not in houses like this. Elijah noticed the shift. He didn't ask, but he felt her distance like a closed door in a room he used to enter freely. He tried to go back to the man he'd always been, guarded, composed, untouchable. But emotions aren't machines. They don't turn off just because logic says so. He began to stay up later, sit by the garden longer. And one night, he found her again, dancing. She thought she was alone. Her body moved like water under the moonlight. Her eyes closed, arms stretched toward something invisible. He didn't speak. He stepped forward, quietly, removed his shoes, and joined her. No music, no instructions. Just two people moving through the stillness of their own stories. Her pain, his emptiness, their longing. The moonlight wrapped around them like a secret. But secrets have shadows. And someone was watching. Because that night, a camera caught everything. What would you do if love meant risking the only version of yourself the world lets you be? The headlines didn't wait. They never do. Billionaire dumps heiress for Maid. Love triangle shatters high society engagement. From housekeeper to heartbreaker, who is Malia? Her name, once known only to the few who bothered to read the staff roster, was now plastered across tabloids, gossip blogs, morning talk shows. Strangers debated her character over coffee. Paparazzi camped outside the Grant estate. Rumors twisted the truth, then twisted it again. Malia didn't fight back. She didn't ask for her side to be heard. She just disappeared. No note, no confrontation, no goodbye. Her room was left tidy. The sheets were folded. The uniform hung neatly on a wire hanger by the door. Only her shoes were missing. the ones she danced in. Elijah searched, quietly, desperately. He used private contacts, traced every step, every street she might have gone. But for the first time in his life, money meant nothing. You can't buy someone who doesn't want to be found. Days turned into weeks. Silence filled the mansion she left behind. The halls that once echoed with her quiet laughter were still again. Then, one rainy evening, in a part of the city Elijah would never normally visit, she was seen. No cameras, no photographers, just a street corner, a portable speaker, and Malia, dancing, not for attention, not for fame, not even for Elijah, for herself. Her movements slow, drenched, delicate. A cardboard sign lay nearby. "Don't give me pity, just let me dance." She spun beneath a flickering street lamp, raindrops catching in her hair. People passed. A few dropped coins. Most didn't stop. But she kept dancing, because that's what Malia did when the world forgot her. She remembered herself. What would you do if the only place you ever felt free was the same place the world tried to take from you? Before she wore aprons and swept beneath chandeliers, Malia was someone else. Not many knew it, not even Elijah. But once, she had stood center stage in one of the most prestigious dance academies on the East Coast. Her name had been whispered with promise, the next great one. Her instructors saw brilliance in her every move. Her peers watched with awe as she moved like breath itself. She was 18 when everything changed. A torn ligament during rehearsal, a failed surgery. Then came the betrayal. A friend who had once trained beside her quietly took her scholarship, took her spotlight, took her place. Malia had no family to fight for her, no lawyer, no headlines. Just a quiet exit through the back door of the academy, a suitcase and a job posting for a maid in St. Louis. The world never asked where she went, and she never volunteered the story. Until now. A stranger had recorded her dancing in the rain on that forgotten street corner. Just 1 minute and 37 seconds. A clip posted to social media with no caption. But it spread like wildfire. The comments poured in. Who is this? Why does this feel like watching someone remember who they are? She's not just dancing, she's telling a story. And somewhere, in a penthouse that still smelled faintly of her presence, Elijah watched. Alone. In silence. The screen lit up with her figure, moving with grace the world had nearly buried. No stage, no audience, just her. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. But something inside him cracked. He had thought he was saving her. From Ava, from the house, from the scrutiny. But in that moment he realized she never needed saving. She just needed to be seen. What would you do if you realized the person you tried to rescue had been stronger than you all along? He found her again, not with security teams or private cars, not with assistants or headlines, just him. Elijah Grant stood across the street from a dimly lit corner where the pavement still held traces of last night's rain. Malia was there, adjusting the straps on her worn shoes, her small speaker tucked under her arm. She hadn't seen him yet. She wasn't expecting anyone. He waited, then crossed. Slowly, carefully, as if afraid one wrong step might shatter the moment. When she looked up and saw him, she didn't run. She didn't smile either. She just watched, waiting for whatever version of him had come this time. He didn't offer an apology. He didn't speak in the language of guilt or regret. Instead, he took a quiet breath and said, "I came because I wanted to see you again. Not the maid, not the rumor, just you." She looked at him, still unsure. "I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who wanted things from me," he continued. "But you reminded me what it meant to feel, what it meant to be still and present with someone." Then, gently, he reached into his coat pocket and held out a folder. "I've spoken with a foundation. They're ready to fund a small studio, downtown. No strings, no favors. Just a place to dance, a place to teach, if you want it." She stared at the papers. She didn't reach for them. The silence between them stretched until it felt like a decision all by itself. Then she said, "I don't want your money." His eyes dropped, but then she added softer, "But thank you for seeing me." She stepped back, her voice steadier now. "I'll dance again, but this time, for me." And with that she turned back toward the corner, pressed play on her speaker, and stepped once more into the rhythm that had always belonged to her. Not for approval, not for escape, not for love, but for freedom. What would you do if walking away was the only way to finally become yourself? 3 years passed. Quietly, without headlines, without scandal. In a forgotten corner of the city, nestled between a laundromat and a hardware store, a small dance school opened its doors. The sign was simple. The windows were hand-painted. Inside, mirrors leaned slightly to one side and the floor creaked in places. But to the kids who came in with heavy stories and tired shoes, it was magic. Malia had built it piece by piece, teaching one child at a time, holding free workshops, letting music echo through cracked walls like it belonged there. She never mentioned her past, not to her students, not to the parents. She didn't need to. Because now, her story lived in every child who dared to move, in every girl who closed her eyes and believed her body could tell a story that words never could. And then came the showcase. It was their first performance. Nothing grand. Folding chairs, handmade programs, a few borrowed lights. But every seat was filled. Families squeezed together, phones in hand, waiting. Malia didn't notice him at first. He sat in the third row. No suit, no entourage, just Elijah, alone, watching. He didn't come to be seen. He came to see. When her name was called, she stepped onto the small stage barefoot. No spotlight. Just her and the music. She didn't look nervous. She didn't flinch. She moved with the grace of someone who had stopped asking for permission. She danced not for forgiveness, not for validation, but for every version of herself who once wondered if she was enough. And as she spun across the floor, faces leaned forward, eyes followed. Silence fell. Because now, they saw her. Not as a maid, not as a scandal, not as someone who'd survived, but as someone who had finally returned to herself. She was no longer invisible. She was home. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is watch someone come alive, without trying to own their light. It's easy to believe love is about rescue, or grand gestures, or fixing what's broken. But sometimes, real love is quiet. It's stepping back. It's letting go. It's recognizing that the person in front of you was never lost, only waiting to be seen. Elijah didn't save Malia. She saved herself. And maybe that's the point. What would you have done if you were Elijah or Malia? Was it love or redemption? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And if this story moved you, hit like and subscribe, because next week, we're telling the story of a woman who walked away from $1 billion inheritance just to live free. You won't want to miss it.